All right, everybody. Good morning. My name is Eric Hayden. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist with the Weather Service office out of Newport, Morehead City. Looking at the current radar image for the storm off our coast, potential cyclone number 16. Already seeing some rain across eastern North Carolina. These darker greens and especially the yellows that are already moving across portions of the Outer Banks, also down East Carteret County through Morehead, out our office here in Newport, starting to get some moderate rain. This will only increase throughout the day. So rain picking up steady and heavy at times through the remainder of today. As the storm center approaches tonight, it may become more scattered, but we're getting into some of those heavier bands of rainfall today, so certainly watch out for that. The other thing we noticed in the operations area this morning, the center of the storm off our coast, there's a lot of lightning over the last 3-4 hours. That's an indication that this storm is probably strengthening off our coast. The forecast is for a storm to continue to move our way as we head through the rest of today. Right now, it's a potential cyclone. We talked about that yesterday. A couple things I want to point out. It is still expected to be a high-end tropical storm as it approaches our coastline sometime late tonight, more likely tomorrow morning. This is our forecast cone where we think the center of the storm will go. This is a really good emphasis point with this storm. Notice this orange shaded area. That is the tropical storm force winds, well beyond the cone itself. It's a very large storm, so we will see those tropical storm force winds here by late this morning, well ahead of landfall. So despite the landfall being Saturday morning, keep in mind these tropical storm force winds, especially in the form of gusts, will approach our area by late this morning. That's one point we want to really emphasize on this track forecast. Confidence is high on the track. It really has not changed much from yesterday, but just really emphasizing that wind field will occur well ahead of the center of the storm. Overnight last night, no changes to the storm surge watches and warnings. We, of course, increased the warning yesterday evening with the 5 o'clock update. So especially concerned, Pamlico, Pungo rivers will show you those values. Neuse River, lower end of the sound. Just took a look at some of the gauges in New Bern and Oriental, just starting to see a little bit of a rise, but keep in mind those strong winds are not here yet. So we expect the water levels to continue to increase today, probably peaking in those areas sometime later tonight into the first thing part of Saturday, and then more of an issue midday Saturday through Saturday evening for Soundside Outer Banks, and we'll focus on those areas here in a second. Still expecting 3 to 5 feet potential storm surge above normally dry ground. Again, what does that mean? Low-lying areas along the rivers and sounds that are usually dry could have 3 to 5 feet of water above those locations, and really concerned with that northeast fetch all the way down the Pamlico Sound, really piling up that water up the Neuse, Pamlico, and Pungo rivers. Also our friends in down East Carteret County, Cedar Island, vulnerable locations on that northeast wind. 2 to 4 feet of surge possible on the Crystal Coast. This is all track dependent. Can't let our guard down yet. Landfall expected somewhere Carteret County, Cape Lookout area. If it shifts just a little bit, 15-20 miles to the west, that would put these areas, Swansboro, Emerald Isle, more at risk for that storm surge. So that's why we still have a forecast potential 2 to 4 feet. It's going to depend on the track. If we end up on that east side of the storm, those values will be correct. If not, they could be a little lower. We certainly hope that is the case. The other area of concern, and we tried to increase our messaging with this because we still have some time. This is not until late morning Saturday through Saturday evening. Our friends on the Outer Banks, kind of a two-prong attack. Southeast winds shifting into the northeast ahead of the storm. So real strong northeast winds. Not a lot of time to pile up the water. So we could have some oceanside issues today through Friday, later tonight. Not expecting it to be a major oceanside impact. Could have some overwash, especially on Highway 12 at periods of high tide. Our bigger concern is Soundside areas, specifically from Hatteras Island, especially the Bend near Buxton. We don't want to get too cute with it, but with a southwest wind, that would favor areas farther to the north. So Avon up through Rodanthe, Pea Island, certainly a concern with Roanoke Island, so that includes you and Manio, and also the backside, Kitty Hawk, Nag's Head, those areas, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge possible. So want to start thinking about where you would move your cars if those water levels come up. And we do think it's going to be a fast rise. Northeast persistent winds blowing the water away from us on Soundside Outer Banks, quickly shifting into the southwest sometime midday Saturday, and then those water levels could come up very sharply. So we kind of know the drill if you've lived here for a while. with the water blowing out and then potentially rushing back, especially from the Bend, Hatteras Island northward up through some of those areas such as Roanoke Island. So please keep that in mind. We've got time with it, but just want to get that message out into the community. As far as wind is concerned, no big changes with this. Our highest impact coastal waters and immediate areas adjacent to the water, especially with a northeast exposure. You could have some of those stronger winds down East Carteret County, some of those open facing areas to the Pamlico Sound. So for most of us, wind gust in tropical storm force range, 30 to 40 miles per hour. With the saturated ground, we could have some scattered power outages. Never want to rule that out. They would be more likely with this stronger wind field of 40 to 55 mile per hour winds. And you'll notice the numbers change. Don't fixate too much on specific values. I know some places are lower than yesterday, some places are higher, but notice we're still saying around 70 in Ocracoke. Really anywhere near and east of the landfall of the system early Saturday morning, we could have those gusts approaching 70 miles per hour. The point of this graphic is strong tropical storm force winds are expected with that storm later tonight and tomorrow morning. So we always preach, don't focus on the category. We can have some strong winds and surge, even if it is not a hurricane. As far as flooding goes, our rainfall amounts have not really changed, but we kind of highlighted an area of highest concern where we think those bands of heavy rain will set up. The most likely area would be this area shaded in red. So anybody on this map is at risk for flash flooding, but we're really concerned with, Hyde County down through Pamlico, southern Craven County, New Bern, Havelock, especially those urban areas where we get ponding of water. Even in a thunderstorm, we could have some water issues. And notice this red shade does include Onslow County. So when you see this rainfall map, yes, generally speaking, 3 to 5 inches of rain for our area. We're starting to see it now, isolated up to 7, but it's really wherever that band of heavy rain sets up, and that's really anywhere from mainland Dare County down through Morehead City, including Jacksonville and New Bern. Those are the areas highest risk for that flash flooding. It will be when those bands of heavy rain come in. Probably peaking this evening, and then through tonight and tomorrow. It's not that the rain ends, but actually as the storm center approaches, the rain may become much more scattered and localized. That's where we could start to get some of that banding and training in certain areas that will have that flood potential. This risk has increased a little bit over the last 24 hours. Everybody's at risk for a few tornadoes, but several tornadoes are possible in the orange shaded areas. So roughly along and east of Highway 17. We've seen some of these features over the water now. Some question whether they translate, onto shore. The biggest thing you can do, make sure your cell phone is charged up. Make sure that cell phone does not have do not disturb on. You don't turn it off tonight, because this threat will last through tonight, probably peaking tonight. So as you go to bed, we want to make sure you have ways to get those warnings, and it could cause some isolated damage in spots well away from the center and well away from where we expect the strongest tropical storm force winds. So just to wrap it up, if you're just joining us, still predicting 2 to 5 feet of storm surge. Biggest concern initially, the lower Neuse River, Pamlico, Pungo Rivers, southern part of the Pamlico Sound, but then our risk shifts during the day Saturday to the Outer Banks Sound side, especially from Hatteras Island northward. That's where we could see some sharp water level rises. Tropical storm force winds are approaching our coast by late this morning. Winds will continue to pick up through today. Already seeing the rain, probably the steadiest through this evening, then becoming scattered tonight, locally up to 7 inches. And we just mentioned that tornado threat. Please have ways to get those warnings. Just some housekeeping notes. We do not anticipate any more additional webinars unless we need it. As we get into the nitty gritty with the storm, we can take calls, and you can message us through Slack and other means to kind of pinpoint some of that specific information you want. We will send our next briefing today at 6:30. More than likely, this will be our last one. Things have not changed much. If there's major changes, we could send an additional briefing, but we're kind of into the storm now. So now it's call us on the phone, message us through Slack, and we will handle those calls as well. Really appreciate some of the information you're getting out to the community. I know I harped on the hourly weather graph yesterday. Island Free Press, thank you for putting that information in the newspaper. We really want folks to look at our information, and we feel strongly that that hourly weather forecast will give people a good idea of what we expect with the storm, and it's what we're staffed up to update here throughout the day. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you with any questions. I will take questions in the chat first. It's easier to see it in a written format. Otherwise, raise your hand and I will unmute you and we will go from there.